Hi, I am Michael Kourosh and welcome to Design Santa Barbara. This week we are in Santa Barbara Design Center and I'm excited to share with you an entire episode dedicated to one of my favorite topics, art. Our first profile will be of American artist Georgia O'Keeffe. Born in Wisconsin in 1887 to Irish and Hungarian dairy farmers, Georgia decided she wanted to be an artist by the age of 10. When her family moved to Virginia at the turn of the century, Georgia stayed in Wisconsin to complete her education. Upon graduation, she moved to Illinois and began attending the School of Art Institute of Chicago, studying with Dutch-American artist John Henry van der Poel. After taking a year off to recover from typhoid fever, Georgia O'Keeffe moved to New York City and began studying at the Art Students League of New York. There she studied under American master William Merritt Chase, and in 1908 she won the League's William Merritt Chase Still Life Prize for her oil painting Dead Rabbit with Copper Pot. Her prize was a scholarship to attend the League's outdoor summer school in Lake George, New York. While in the city, O'Keeffe visited galleries such as 291, co-owned by her future husband, photographer Alfred Stieglitz. The gallery promoted the work of avant-garde artists from the United States and Europe and photographers. In late 1908, O'Keeffe made the decision not to pursue a career as a fine artist. Her father had recently declared bankruptcy and her mother was terminally ill. With no financial support, she moved back to Chicago and took up work as a commercial artist until 1910. After 4 years without painting, she began teaching art at various schools around the Midwest, including some institutes that she had attended as a child. Simultaneously teaching and attending art classes, Georgia O'Keeffe eventually found inspiration in the innovative ideas of Arthur Wesley Dow. Her studies at the University of Virginia in 1914, based upon Dow's principles, were pivotal in O'Keeffe's development as an artist. Through her exploration and growth as an artist, she helped to establish the American modernism movement. In 1915, O'Keeffe completed a series of highly innovative abstract charcoals. A friend showed them to Alfred Stieglitz in his 291 gallery early in 1916. Stieglitz found them to be, quote, the purest, finest, sincerest things that had entered 291 in a long while. And in April of that year began showcasing her artwork. O'Keeffe, who enjoyed sunrises and sunsets, developed a fondness for intense and nocturnal colors. Building upon her abstract practices, O'Keeffe painted to express her most private sensations and feelings. Rather than sketching out a design before painting, she freely created designs. O'Keeffe continued to experiment until she believed she truly captured her feelings in the watercolor. Light Coming on the Plains, number 1. Returning to New York in 1918, O'Keeffe and Stieglitz, 25 years her senior, became close friends and he supported her financially while introducing her to the leaders of modern art movement. They were married in 1924. O'Keeffe began creating simplified images of natural things, such as leaves, flowers, and rocks. Inspired by Precisionism, the green apple, completed in 1922, depicts her notion of simple, meaningful life. O'Keeffe said that year, "It is only by selection, by elimination, and by emphasis that we get at the real meaning of things." After having moved into a 30th floor apartment in the Shelton Hotel in 1925, O'Keeffe began a series of paintings of the city, skyscrapers, and a skyline. One of the most notable works, which demonstrates her skill of depicting the buildings in the Precisionism style, is the Radiator Building, Night, New York. In 1924, Stieglitz arranged a simultaneous exhibit of O'Keeffe's works of art and his photographs at Anderson Galleries. and arranged for other major exhibits. The Brooklyn Museum held a retrospective of her works in 1927. In 1928, he announced to the press that 6 of her calla lily paintings sold to an anonymous buyer in France for $25,000. But there is no evidence that this transaction occurred the way Stiglitz reported. However, due to the press, O'Keeffe's paintings sold at a higher price from that point forward. By the late 20s, she was noted for her work as an American artist, particularly for the paintings of New York City, skyscrapers, and close-up paintings of flowers. In 1929, Georgia O'Keeffe traveled to Taos, New Mexico, an event which started a relationship with the Southwest that would last the rest of her life. Her marriage was a tumultuous one, with Stiglitz admitting to several affairs over the years. She was hospitalized with depression and abandoned her art for a considerable time in the early 1930s. In 1940, Georgia O'Keeffe discovered the Ghost Ranch in New Mexico and immediately fell in love with the location. She moved there and split her time between New Mexico and New York. Upon Stiglitz's death in 1946, O'Keeffe spent 3 years selling his estate, then moved to New Mexico permanently. Todd Webb, a photographer she met in the 1940s, moved to New Mexico in 1961. He often made photographs of her, as did numerous other important American photographers, who constantly presented O'Keeffe as a loner, a severe figure, and self-made person. While O'Keeffe was known to have a prickly personality, Webb's photographs portrayed her with a kind of quietness and calm, suggesting a relaxed friendship and revealing new contours of O'Keeffe's character. O'Keeffe enjoyed traveling to Europe and then around the world, beginning in the 1950s. Several times she took rafting trips down the Colorado River, including a trip down the Glen Canyon, Utah area in the 1961 with Webb. In 1977, Georgia O'Keeffe was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and in 1985, at the age of 97, she received the National Medal of Arts. Her last 13 years were dedicated to learning clay pottery and writing her autobiography, but she worked in charcoal up until the age of 95. When Georgia O'Keeffe passed away in 1986 at the age of 98, her ashes were scattered on her beloved Ghost Ranch, and the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum was established in Santa Fe. In 2014, O'Keeffe's 1932 painting, Jimson Weed, sold for $44.4 million, more than 3 times the previous world auction record for any female artist. I hope you have enjoyed this look into the fascinating life of Georgia O'Keeffe. Stay tuned. There is more Design Santa Barbara after the break. Today on Design FYI, we're going to talk about what not to buy when you're going shopping for rugs. Most big outlets or national chains, they sell nowadays hand-tufted rugs. This sounds like it's hand knotted, it's done by hand, but actually they are not. It's called hand-tufted and is actually a gun that rolls the wool around the warp, and they are not good rugs at all. So this is a sample we're having here for you to see. Anything that has a backing like this, flip your rugs over at home, see if it has a backing, is absolutely not good. So what it does is it hides what they did below this thing, which is a latex glue, which actually is toxin. And if you have got any rugs over the net, I hate to say it, over the net, because it's easy to sell and they're inexpensive, you buy these things over the internet. So when it comes to your house, they smell. Have you noticed that? They smell more like a gasoline or more like a diesel because they don't let the latex cure. And the latex that glues this wool to this backing smells a lot. On top of that, they shed quite a lot. The wool is cheap because they need to be inexpensive, and they shed. I would not recommend you to get anything, again, that has a backing and is glued, because it comes apart very easily. It is temporary. It is not a green product because they wear very quickly, end up in the fill, and just basically as a landfill junk we are adding to our planet. The things I would recommend you to get, unlike these things that have backing, is the rugs that they have nuts to them. So as what to buy, I highly recommend you to get some rugs that they are hand knotted. And how you can see, flip it to the back, and you can see the knots are done individually, and each one is slightly different than the next one because they're done by hand, and the intensity of the wool and the pull they have, the weaver, makes them look different. Also, the sides are done by hand. That you can see very easily. If you want to buy a real rug, please come to Santa Barbara Design Center and I can gladly help you. Thank you for joining us on Design FYI, Santa Barbara Design Center, 410 Olive. On this edition of Michael's Minute, I would like to talk to you about mid-century modern furniture. Mid-century modern is described as the period between 1933 and 1965, in which designers such as Eames and Nakashima used clean lines and futuristic materials to propel design into a post-war era. At Santa Barbara Design Center, you can see and feel a variety of mid-century inspired furniture, including our signature leather chairs and recliners with classical wood frames. Accent them with side tables, daybeds, ottomans for a slick, artistic look. Customize these pieces to fit your home perfectly. To bring mid-century modern style to your home, please visit us at Santa Barbara Design Center, 410 Olive Street.
Welcome to Rugs & More. We provide the West Coast with the most comprehensive collection of new, oriental, and antique rugs. Rugs are solid art investments and often become cherished family treasures. Our limitless inventory will warm up your home. Exotic or traditional, tribal or modern, our rugs weave stories through intricate patterns, compelling colors, and touchable materials. #1 in Santa Barbara for over 20 years. Visit us today at Rugs & More, 410 Olive Street in Santa Barbara.
Today on Michael's Minute, I would like to talk to you about fabrics. Fabrics are quite essential items for your upholstery and window covering, and we have a huge selection of them. We have Durally fabrics, Fabricot, my favorite, Cravat, we have our own house fabrics, and we have Ralph Lauren. For indoor-outdoor use, we have many different fabrics, and I would highly recommend you to come to Santa Barbara Design Center to see the largest selection of fabrics in town. Santa Barbara Design Center, 410 Olive. In this edition of Michael's Minutes, let's talk about sofas, be it classical, transitional, or modern. The style you choose should be based on your personal preference. Once you have a style, selecting the right size and shape for your space is critical. We offer love seats, sofas, sectionals, and sectionals with a return. The next step is selecting the right fabric for your lifestyle. You can choose from casual to durable, even washable. Last but not least comes the comfort of your sofa. We carry many materials like high-density foam that you can cover in polyester, down, or premium angel hair for maximum comfort and support. I invite you to come to Santa Barbara Design Center at 410 Olive Street and select your dream sofa. Today on Design Santa Barbara, we have a dear friend and world-famous painter, James Paul Brown, and thank you for coming to our show. I appreciate having you on our show. And we would like to start with a question. I understand you were groomed to become a banker. What happened that you're an artist now?
It was an old family bank in the Midwest, and my great-great-grandfather started it. And there were 4 boys in the family, and so my grandfather was head of it, and then my father was head of it, and so I did go for an MBA in banking at Northwestern. Didn't really work. Then I was going to be a lawyer and be head of the trust department, and I didn't like that either. But I was taking art. But it's sort of like Toulouse-Lautrec, if I can make a comparison here. His father was esteemed, and my grandparents and my father was esteemed, and during the Depression they would take care of the farmers back then, and they would do it on a handshake too. So, but it just didn't work for me.
Well, that's actually wonderful. It's good that you're an artist, because we enjoy your art probably more than your banking skills. So my other question is, how did you find your style?
Once again, Toulouse-Lautrec, his mother loved his art when he was young. He was enabled by his mother, and I think my mother, I know my mother adored the little things I did as a child. And there was an artist from New England who lived nearby. We lived in the country, so I'd have to walk a couple miles to his studio and take lessons from him. And it was really enabled by my mother, who was so fond of anything I did, actually.
What are some of the works you're most proud of?
I think in the late 70s, maybe 79. George Balanchine touched his sword with his lead dancer from New York City Ballet, John Clifford, who was the youngest dancer at that time in American Ballet Theater, New York City Ballet, and touched him with his sword and said, "Go to Los Angeles and start my company." So I had the honor of being Degas. Degas painted the ballet for 24 years. I had 4 years with this incredible company. We had great dancers with the Los Angeles Ballet. Kelsey Kirkland's sister was our prima ballerina, and we had Brishnikov and Goodenough, and all these people came to our dance company, and we had a little studio, which I loved. I would wear my little painting outfit so I wouldn't get my paint all over myself and watch them, and it was the ballerinas were just, they could jump in the air, and so I first thought I could do it by sketching, just sketching them. They wouldn't hold still when they're in the air, and so that was a problem. So Degas took pictures. I found out eventually that, that he took pictures of these ballerinas at the studio getting ready and on the bar, et cetera, which led me in '84 to, well, after that I painted the Pan Am Games, so I painted, that was in Venezuela at the time, so I painted the president of Venezuela. That was for CBS television, as I remember. Then that led into the '84 Olympics. There was David Hockney and Leroy Neiman and myself were the artists for that venue.
Oh, wonderful.
And Hockney painted his friends in his pool. He lived down in LA then. And I painted, I think Diane Ladd was our movie star who was coached on swimming and so forth. So we were at the pool looking over our incredible swimmers. So that's what got me painting the Olympics. So that led to Wimbledon and Torino, who was the artist for the Winter Games, and most recently the last Olympics for the Swimming Hall of Fame.
Did all of the famous swimmers that we had on the team. That's what I hear.
Yeah, back then they wouldn't pose for me either. They wouldn't, pause for breath. They were swimming. So at the Hall of Fame in '84, there's a wall in Fort Lauderdale, the Swimming Hall of Fame. Half of it's Leroy Neiman, half are my paintings of people in the water.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Participating, and so those are incredible athletes too.
So James, I know you painted a lot of very famous people around the world, and how do you approach a portrait of a noted person?
I'm thinking that I used to be a runner, as I mentioned before, and I used to live in Malibu, so I would run with Chris Christopherson. This is not going to answer your question, but eventually I will. And at the end of the race, there were like hundreds of women waiting I tried to stay with Chris, a little behind him.
I get it.
Waiting for Chris. Back then he was huge,
yes.
And he was such a great guy back then. Let's see, I painted Lee Strasberg taught Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, Marlon Brando how to act.
Oh, wow.
So I painted Marilyn Monroe.
You painted Marilyn Monroe?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's in the collection and down in LA, and I painted James Dean. That's an interesting story because Lee married Anna Strasberg, who was younger than he. She lived on Central Park West in New York. So I went to her apartment near the Dakota, and she had the dress. She had Marilyn Monroe's dress, which I think is up for auction, and she had the piano and other Marilyn Monroe memorabilia. So and down in LA there's it's Actor Studio, I think it's called. So David Strasberg is younger and still around, and they made a mural of my painting, which I think is 12 foot by 10 foot. It's a mosaic. But many people, other than, I'm trying to think of other people that I painted other than athletes. We did paint the Grand Prix, the auto race for Monaco. I was the artist for that. I painted my wife as a mermaid over Cannes. I was the artist for the Cannes Film Festival. So I stole an idea from Marc Chagall and Picasso, because they had mermaids over Nice, I think Picasso had, and maybe Chagall too. So I had my wife as a mermaid over Cannes.
That's nice.
So did well.
That's wonderful. So can you please tell us about the beautiful works of art you brought today? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about each.
Yes, behind me for the Santa Barbara Zoo, I was the artist for a year, and Jemina the giraffe was alive. Jemina was a lady giraffe, and she went to heaven a few years ago.
And this is the famous giraffe we had in town, probably people don't know it, with the crooked neck.
She was our major tourist attraction. Jemina was, people would come far and wide to see Jemina, the giraffe with the crooked neck, and she was so cute, as you can see.
Absolutely.
This painting. This is inspired by Van Gogh a long time ago. It's more of a female version of Vincent. This was a wine label.
Oh, wine label.
Yeah, this was a wine label. So you go in the reserve, where they have the reserve wines at this beautiful winery called Sunstone. You feel like you're in Provence there. And so that was a wine label. This is a path through the forest, this book. And if you go into Bouchon restaurant, our fine dining restaurant here, they have many paths through the forest. It's on my art of Bouchon, so.
Wonderful. I thank you very much. That has been most informative and one of the most nicest segments we have ever had. I thank you for joining us and looking forward to have you again.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
All right.
Cheers.
Interior designers today, they're using a lot of contemporary and transitional rugs, and that's a segment that has been growing for us over the last few years. They come in many different natural fibers. I recommend you to get one that's hand knotted instead of hand tufted. This particular one is shiny like silk, it's made of bamboo. The other one comes in 1,200 colors, and we make it in every size and shape possible. It is bamboo and wool. And then we have this beauty that is very modern, but at the same time has colors of today's interiors. This other one is a gaby, is a traditional design, but with modern colors. If you are looking for a modern or transitional rug, please come to Rugs and More at 410 Olive, and I will be happy to help you. Today on Design Santa Barbara, we have Lisbeth Medall, our Santa Barbara Design Center's resident artist. I have a question for you. Why do you paint?
I paint for a variety of reasons, but I think the primary one is to express thoughts or feelings that I have when I view a scene. Something must compel me to actually want to paint the scene. And whether it's the light hitting a certain tree or an object, I want to evoke that emotion when I put the paint on the canvas.
Tell me about the process you go through.
maybe I'm taking a walk and I see something that moves me. I will oftentimes go and paint outdoors on location and begin the composition of the painting. It will anchor it in authenticity oftentimes, and I'll go back a few times, but invariably I finish off the painting in my studio, and I take great liberty with the composition, colors.
Tell me about your nocturnes.
Oftentimes you need to paint them quickly because when you're out on location, the light is rapidly changing. So I'll take reference shots, and it becomes a bit challenging as the light wanes to mix your paints. So oftentimes I'll prepare my paints ahead of time.
Oh, you do? All right, Elizabeth, tell us about your current exhibit. I hear is about California locations.
This exhibit is called California by Design, and I specifically chose California as the subject matter because there's so much diversity and beauty within our state.
Elizabeth, thank you very much for taking your time and talking about the process of paintings you do. And if you would like to see some of Elizabeth's wonderful paintings, come to Santa Barbara Design Center and see it for yourself. I hope you have enjoyed this very special episode of Design Santa Barbara. I encourage you to come into Santa Barbara Design Center, and please join us next week.